Beware of the shipping delays this holiday season. At least 1/3 of FedEx Ground's delivery network is reportedly at risk of collapse.
There's weakness there because you watch how quickly Amazon is moving and just punch a hole in it.
It's a problem of technical debt, right, within the supply chain. Every entity has optimized for their own operations.
So to displace, is it possible to displace these guys? And if so, how? And how do you see the market?
We can then, restructure FedEx in a different way.
Okay, it's October 13th, and welcome to the Partnershipping Podcast. I'm your host, Craig Radford. This is the place where we explore the B2C ecosystem together. And like I said last time, the world of B2C is a jungle made up of different players and different entities, and they all make the wheel of e-commerce turn. So speaking of that, we have a very important player in the B2C ecosystem with us today. It's Tiffanie Archie, and she's the Strategic Partnership Manager at Zonos. And if you haven't heard of Zonos, there's a good chance if you've ever bought something online and it was from overseas or from a different country and it crossed the border, that Zonos played some role in getting it there on time and compliantly. So, hey, Tiffanie, welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So, as I mentioned, this is just a good opportunity to explore parts of the B2C world that people don't understand. And I can't think of one maybe more intimidating or worse understood than landed cost software, but it's absolutely huge. And I believe Zonos is the biggest in the world at it. So perhaps just to start off, can you tell us what is Zonos?
Yeah, so we are basically, our little mantra is that we just want to help create trust in global trade. What we do is we offer a suite of products, but kind of like our, the majority of what it's all based off of is landed cost. And I think the biggest thing is that people don't understand the difference between landed cost and duty and tax calculations. A lot of times people will just assume that a duty and tax calculation is going to cover whatever, is being sent out. And unfortunately, what may happen, or what oftentimes happens, is that they'll get a bill back from their carrier with extra fees. So it won't have taken into consideration things like a duty and tax forwarding surcharge, because whatever the destination country is, they have to send those bills back to the originating country. And so, of course, all the carriers will charge fees for that. And then also sometimes there are disbursement or bond fees. So because, again, that carrier's putting up the money for the duty and taxes in the destination country. And so they're charging fees for that. There can also be brokerage fees. Canada should be very well familiar with that. So, and those are mostly on ground shipments. But, there are different reasons why you're going to send things, various types of movements. So those things will all kind of come back in those bills. And so they may be a bit of a surprise and also kind of like eating away at margins. So we ensure.
Yeah, one of the big things I think to help sort of people understand, first off, Canadians should understand because everyone gets a $50 bill every time a UPS, not every time, but many times like a UPS shipment come over the border, you get a $50 charge. The package was only worth $30 to begin with. You try and send it back. But what is de minimis value and what sort of role does that play in this whole situation?
Yeah,
I think that's important for people to start understanding what
huge.
That is. Yeah,
for sure. And every country is different. So there isn't a lot of consistency. I mean, in the EU, they've kind of come together and said this is the de minimis across those countries that are members. But, every single country typically has their own de minimis, and sometimes it's zero. So what that means is if you're sending something to a country and you're displaying, or, you're basically declaring the value of whatever that product is that you're selling, it will be either taxed, there might be duties, or, nothing may apply, or there might be, any kind of different fees that might apply just based on the value of what's entering that country. And so Canada, unfortunately, has one of the lower de minimis values that are out there. So, it's $20 if you're sending something postal, and it's $40 is where you'll get, no charges. There's no brokerage fees applicable. There's no duty tax. And then if you're going through an express carrier, obviously that's going to go up a little bit higher to $40, or, other couriers that are outside of the postal networks. But, it's just going to vary. And then also there's those breaks between duty and tax when those are applicable too. So
Yeah.
it gets complicated. And like I said, every country is different. The US is one of those ones that has an extremely high de minimis. It's $800. And, so most of us, I think what happens is in the US, we don't really understand. And so that there are taxes, duty and taxes that are applicable pretty much anywhere else that you're sending stuff. And so that's stuff that you have to plan for, but also understand when, there are going to be any additional carrier or brokerage fees that are going to apply because the de minimis has been exceeded. And we have.
So it was hard, especially hard to probably articulate this concept to Americans because you have such a high de minimis value. I think it might be the highest in the world now. It used to be Australia. I think it was 1,000. Now I think it's 0 in Australia.
This is still 1,000, but if you
is it?
more than 75,000 in there every year, you are responsible for, getting taxes paid into Australia for those, for sending that much in value to Australia.
But unless you've ordered like a fridge or a piece of expensive jewelry that was over $800 and you're American, you may have never seen this bill that Canadians will often get showing its path over the border and the different costs that you're now paying for that. And it creates just tremendous friction for online e-commerce. So people in other countries, especially Europe, and they understand that. And I did see a stat on your website, and I like to get to the like ROI type stats like this, and it was something like 30 to 35% of visitors to a website for an overseas website will abandon your website within 1 minute if they don't see a duties and landed tax system in play.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's shocking. And but again, I think it's because people know it's, literally on their minds because they know, hey, there are going to be duties and taxes that I'm going to be responsible for. And so there are really good ways that, you as whatever you're selling broadly to the world, regardless of your origin, you can kind of make indications on your website that, hey, we ship internationally, always have an updated FAQ that kind of states that. A lot of people even have like that little shipping section that you can look into. But one of the things that we offer, there's a little pop-up that actually kind of gives them the indication that, hey, you know what, we're recognizing what country you're actually coming from based on their IP. And it just helps to kind of give that customer security that, hey, they actually are shipping to me. And that, they're going to be able to get something, at least it gives them the indication that they're familiar with international shipping. And then obviously when you get to checkout, if there's a landed cost displayed within the checkout, that's huge because they'll truly understand their costs instead of having to wait until it gets to the border and that, amount is disclosed at that point. So
it's the confidence that it will actually arrive because probably they've been primed with the experience of it not always arriving. We used to ship to, our international program was, I would say, bigger before COVID, but up until I would say the last couple of years, everyone has shipped DDU or delivery duties unpaid and done it through postal networks. And I believe it was correct me if you have any cool stats on this, but I believe it's something in the range of 80+% of cross-border e-commerce was being done, perhaps is still, but it's changing, through postal networks, DDU. So they're not really properly clearing it. It's a postal clearance, which is informal. Some packages will just go right through and get delivered to the end customer. And those are sort of the lucky ones that went through the radar, so to speak. And then you have people who deal with a bit of a purgatory. What happens when things start going wrong? Maybe there's certain countries where it goes really wrong, but what does that look like for a person?
Yeah, it's not fun. It's not fun for the consignee, the receiver, or for the shipper, because what'll happen is if something does get over there and the taxes, say you send, and it does vary too, because if it's low value stuff, oftentimes people will send it through postal because they're just like, I can just resend something. It doesn't matter. But, anytime you get into something that's of value, you send that over and, just say it's sent to the UK, for example, and they have that 20% VAT. So if it was a $200, product, it's going to be closer to $240 just with the VAT alone. And then anything else that might apply outside of that. So it's, if the customer did the checkout and they did the $200. Also, if they didn't do it in their currency, they really have no idea what's going to show up on their bank statement because there's no conversion done for them. So they're already kind of, confused as to what their real costs were. And then if it gets into that country and it clears and that, they're trying to attempt delivery and to collect payment, and the person rejects that, or they just don't return the calls, what happens is that shipper is still charged for all that, what I mean, for shipping it all the way to the UK. And then they're also going to pay for the shipping back to them, and then they're also going to have to pay for the duty and tax bill because the carrier already reimbursed the government for the duties and taxes that were levied upon entry. So
Yeah.
it can become super,
and remember, it's the post office stick handling this at the final mile. So what I had seen in my experience was people have a local post office that does things their own way. And so sometimes you'll get a notice at the door saying, come down the street and pay for this. Or sometimes they just will hold it and say, this person didn't pay their fair share. Like this is going back. So it tends to be very surprising what ends up happening if you don't send it DDP. Delivery duty paid. So you can do that through a carrier who's using a solution like a Zonos, eliminate the surprises, and it delivers faster as well because it get held when it's DDU now, especially into Europe. Doesn't it go into like a slow lane or something? I've heard about that.
Yeah, it absolutely does, because what's happening is when you're sending DDU to Europe, iOS is not required, but it's something that if you do have an iOS number and you can send DDP, it will get expedited. What's happening is once it gets into Europe, if it's DDU, a lot of these postal carriers and express carriers will actually clear out of like a general location, and when you send it DDU without iOS, it has to actually go directly into that country for clearance. And so whether or not they have the capabilities of doing that, there can be lengthy delays. And also, like I said, you will be at the bottom of the pile. So they'll get to it whenever they can. So if that country is just not really great at clearing, or if there aren't relationships in country with whatever, service level you used, it can be lengthy delays. Sometimes it could just sit there. There's a bunch of things that can happen because it could be just held up by the government. And like you said, maybe the consignee or the receiver might not even know. So there's a lot of different variables, when you're talking about having to be responsible for paying for something once it gets in the country versus like receiving it just like a domestic, shipment where it just comes right to you. You're always going to have a much better experience. So
So I pulled up the website because I'm a visual learner. I think most people are. First off, very cool website. I like the black and the white and it's blue. It's very cool. Very technology-esque, and it's an API first product, correct?
Yeah. So we are software. We're not, we are literally just a software. We're SaaS, and we don't do like end-to-end fulfillment. We kind of, again, we help enable people to be able to have complete transparency, because when you send something off to fulfillment, oftentimes you're just given a portion of what your product's worth is on the back end, and you don't really understand what you're being charged for. And so we really help create that trust in global trade when we are able to provide a very clear checkout experience, and it's all transparent to you on the back end too. So everything's done.
Absolutely. And then there's two core ways of consuming this. So I doing my research here, the perhaps less common way is the pure API, and you have a very sophisticated API, and I believe you also have a new technology as well, similar to API, Graph QL. Coming as well. Yep.
And that what it is essentially, instead of making multiple API calls, you just send one request through and you can get multiple things accomplished. So you can, with us, we'll do the landed cost, we'll do a classification. We can look at, restricted items or denied parties, and all of that can be done like within one call, and customs information, all that stuff. So we are able to kind of like have one call. If you did want to directly connect into the API, we could do that all at once. Or, we do have plugins with major e-com platforms. So it's really up to you. Just kind of
that's the second way to consume. So one is API. That's probably if you have a custom website, or like you're a complex marketplace, or you really own the plumbing of your tech. Probably that's the way you'd go about it, and then most people would end up there, on Shopify or whatever, and so they will just go in through a pre-existing connection.
Yes, exactly. So
Okay. Well, because I wanted to take a look at it, you had mentioned before the show that we could maybe buy something and do a checkout. So let's see the strap warehouse. Let's buy something
So one
from
little
here.
thing you want to do you see down there in the left-hand corner how it has a little Canadian flag?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's hello. It's recognizing that your IP address is in Canada, and the Strap Warehouse is just letting you know, hey, what? We sell to you. We will ship to you. And what's kind of cool about it is it welcomes you. And if you were actually in Quebec, it would pull in the French version of this. So it's really kind of recognizing from your IP what your settings are and all that good stuff. And then it does give you information about your de minimis. And so it we try and spell that out for it. So also the customer is equally educated, just as much as the merchant. So
yeah, that's cool because you're giving them in just one very short paragraph, basically the meat and potatoes of the hurdles for getting things into Canada, which I've never seen it summarized in such a short order there. That's pretty good. So
we try.
Well, we're not buying a $2,000. Let's see what we want to buy. What are these things?
I think it's like a leash, and I think I know those are the ranges, because I think if you just buy a 1 foot leash versus like a 400-foot material for the leashes, like I think it's pretty like $16.95 if you did just like 2 feet or whatever. But yeah, and then the other thing, just for example, it's not super clear, but if you were coming in from Europe, these would all be displayed in euros. It is dollars, but it is Canadian dollars. So it is recognizing too that you are within Canada, and we're going to present a localized checkout for you.
Okay, wicked. So we're going to go with, this is like 1 inch thick, I think.
Oh yeah.
Choose a width, and then we'll do Wismo. I'm actually colorblind. Is that Wismo blue right there?
Maybe 2 more to the left. There you go. That's a little more Wismo-y.
Oh yeah, perfect. We'll have to give this to our Wismo dog.
There you go.
Well, we're just over 40, so I think we're gonna get, please select an option, like the length.
Perfect.
Yeah. Is that 25 feet? Oh, is this one of the one? Okay, all right. It's a long. Yeah. A lot of leash for a dog.
Exactly. Maybe you get to make 5 of them.
All right. Proceed to checkout.
There you go. Okay, cool. All right.
So this is to be pouring out my credit card information here at the later stages of editing.
I know.
Let's do.
You might be needing to do some screen caps here, peeps.
So it's okay. I'm starting to learn how to do those things in my video editing software.
I love it. So that's perfect. So, and what's kind of cool is, again, like it already recognized you're in Canada. So the checkout recognizes that. And then what's going to happen is as soon as your address is in there, it's going to be able to pull in whatever service levels the merchant has selected. And it's going to provide the shipping cost, but also the landed cost associated with it.
Got to have a phone number in there.
Yeah.
And let's see.
There you go.
That's the same billing address. Perfect. And then how do we want to send it? UPS standard.
Yeah, but
let's go. These are some. Hey, you know what? They use Wismo. We get that down. Just kidding. UPS is good too.
Your duties and taxes is right below. So you can see that where it's saying actually, if you ship standard, it'll be $44.77 on top of the shipping. And then if you change to expedited and saver, because brokerage is included, that amount should go down. So sometimes you've got to mess with your service levels because it might actually be less expensive. I mean, the ground option might.
I remember this from my UPS days, which I wanted to get in with you because we're both ex-UPSers of 6+ years or something.
Yes,
so because standard, there's always the brokerage fee for it, but if you pay for a premium service, it's included. So in this case, it's going to be cheaper.
There you go. Do your shopping. Come on, we're looking for like best route, best way.
All right, we're gonna hope. God, this is a pretty fancy leash here. All right, let's place our order. Oh, let's get our card number in there.
Nice. This is hilarious that you're actually doing this. I love it.
We all have to take care of our dogs.
Yeah, we do.
like
And you get to take
our
care of 5
children.
small dogs,
Yeah.
like, something. So, and it's all done in Canadian. So, when you look at your bank statement, you're going to see a withdrawal for 112.87 Canadian. So, it's going to
Which
match.
we know would be a surprise if you didn't convert it in the card here. It'd be a surprise because we've gotten absolutely slammed with our currency because the U.S. is doing so well with
Yeah,
their currency at the moment. So okay, thanks for your order summary total. Okay, done. So we've done it, and I am a Canadian who bought a leash from U.S. and that's probably going to arrive pretty quick given the method that we shipped it through. So
absolutely.
cool. Well, sometimes you just have to see it to really understand, what we're talking about. It just really simplifies it. So you're just indexing the experience into a local currency or a local country so that it's as if as if everybody lived in one country and there were no borders.
Absolutely. I mean, making sure, especially at checkout, that's so important for conversion. If you're localizing that experience for that customer, they're going to be so much more likely to complete the transaction. So it makes sense, and they're understanding, and again, they're understanding a true landed cost. It's not just a duty and tax calculation. And I mean, even they don't care so much when they see the duty and tax because they're like, this is great. It's more the merchant on the back end that if that hasn't been built into their margins, they're the ones who are going to end up suffering, unfortunately. So.
Yeah, getting the international buyers back online after COVID has ended is that they're just getting the behavior back that they're comfortable buying again overseas. So I think DDP, at least for us, we are making a push for that because we see that's where people are going. So,
Well, and we've seen with like VAT and, the VAT changes last year, IOS changes, those governments are making insane amounts of money now that they were losing before on low value clearances. And so it's just really one of those things that regardless, it's going to start happening in every country when they start to see the amount of revenue that they could be reclaiming. So it's one of those things that just makes sense. And you're probably going to see a lot more of this rolling out. And as things get more complicated, where they'll expect you to have like tax management capabilities, or you'll have to register for these IDs, all that stuff. Zonos makes it easy where it's kind of like one stop, it's inclusive. You don't have to worry about dealing with all that stuff. We have a landed cost guarantee where we're so confident in our capabilities of calculating that we guarantee it. You don't even get the duty and tax bills anymore. They come to us. We do all of that reporting, reconciliation, remittance. And it's one of those things, again, where it's like we just want to make this process as simple as possible and just let you continue to do what you do well, which is like selling your goods.
okay, so I'll just back you up a little bit because I think this is an important part. If you didn't use Zonos and you were trying to be compliant, if you were trying to be, perfect Boy Scout with how you do everything, what does it look? It's pretty hard to do. Like, what does it look like
Yeah.
if you're doing it by scratch versus your method?
Yeah, just for example, I mean, in the UK, it's a requirement. You absolutely, if you wanted to ship anything into the UK B2C under 135 pounds, you have to be registered. You have to have a VAT number, and that has to be transmitted when you are sending stuff over. And so you would actually have to be doing those calculations yourself, keeping fingers crossed they're correct. And then you would register for the VAT ID. There are people who facilitate that, but they charge like $5,000 and up. And then
Because
there's
it's that hard to fill out paperwork.
well, everybody's
Yeah.
annoyed and they don't want to do it, right? I don't even
Yeah.
think it's like hard. I think it's like tedious, and people
Yeah.
just
And
don't.
you're busy, so why? Like,
Yeah.
you have
Yeah.
enough forms to fill out for your own government versus all the other countries in the world. So, I
Exactly.
mean, it's basically broken, and you need technology to fix it. So,
Yeah.
okay, so if you were doing it from scratch, you'd sign up, and then So here's the other thing: you'd actually have to put your VAT number that you get from the UK. Well, I've heard either on the shipping label or just pass the VAT number through the shipping like API call to the carrier. From what I understand, that doesn't always work 100%. So you gotta have the right carrier who's
Yeah.
actually passing that data along, because every country has different systems probably for is it safe just to put it right on the label, or is that
No.
unsafe to do because it's like a password almost? Like how
Yeah.
does
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, it's not recommended. We definitely don't. We try and make sure that we're just transmitting the data, so it's all electronically done. I know this has like come up for other people too, like the privacy concerns, just because, I mean, it's not that it really seems to be happening. At least, we aren't seeing anybody trying to use our number or anything like that. But It could be something that once people get more sophisticated, we just started doing this a year and a half ago at this point. And so, there's fraud everywhere, right? There's
No,
different ways to
absolutely.
fraud everybody. So it's like, it's one of those things I would not suggest putting it on the label, but I know different people do different things, but most carriers will allow it to be transmitted. But like you said, I mean, we even get calls saying, hey, what's the iOS number? And it's like, well, we've already provided that to you multiple times, but
We've seen that, and it's because it's so new being rolled out. But if you have the right carrier and they have the relationship with that government, and they can get it done for you.
Exactly.
So you would, if you were doing it from scratch, you'd be uploading money into an account on say the UK's VAT website, or you'd be accumulating a bill as things trickle in and pay it quarterly, right?
Yeah, so you would have to be tracking all of that yourself. You would have to be dealing with the remittances, the reporting. I mean, because you're going to have to also send in reports about like what was collected up front, and it has to be collected up front. It has to be collected in checkout. If you do not collect that up front and it gets into the UK, they'll send it back. So, and then if you're sending stuff and stuff does get through somehow, they're coming after people. So it's not like there's really an option when you're talking about those dollar amounts. And so we do a couple different things. We can limit it. So if you just don't want to sell under 135 pounds, or you want to force people to like order above the thresholds, we can help with that. There's that education piece. Again, if you were in the UK, the little flag would come up and it would give you the de minimis information. Or again, like with our landed cost guarantee, you don't worry about it. We get the bills, we do all of it. And, it's basically super easy and turnkey.
What does it look like so we saw what it is when you're checking out as an end customer, but if you're a merchant, is there a portal that you're going into on your side where you can see the balance climbing and you load money into that? Is that how it works?
No, you don't deal with it. Basically, again, we're collecting that. And so, and we have like our whole thing within dashboard is, there's a couple different like products that we actually have. So some of it is just automatically done, like checkout, because we have you sign up for a Stripe account and whatever. So it's not like super important to get into the details, but some of it is directly billed, and then others of it is just like we will bill you for it. You guys get the money to us, but there's a reporting section specifically that shows you anything that's been accumulated for UK, EU, Australia, Norway. Anyone who has like requirements in terms of like when you're hitting those annual thresholds, or just like for UK and iOS it's immediate, but those payments are paid quarterly or however it's required. And then but we have all of that tracking in there. So if you have your order IDs will directly link to what is being collected, and so they can pull their own reports just so they can kind of see too, like, hey, this is what was actually done on our behalf.
Yeah,
so,
for their accounting department or whatever at the end of the
they don't
quarter,
even
end of the
need it
year.
though, because it's not like it's kind of going through us. So it's one of those things where, again, we've really enabled it, and so they can look at it, but they're not going to be.
Yeah, I think you taking over the flow of money is a huge value driver. That's what we've kind of found would confusing even for ourselves is like, who do you pay?
Yeah.
When do you pay them? What currency? All that stuff. So there's a lot of complexity you must be managing behind the scenes there. So it sounds like in the future, if every country is requiring this, you basically need a solution to be selling. I don't really see it working if you're just doing it all yourself.
I mean, if you're really smart and maybe like super, brainy, I just don't know how people would
if you do your own taxes, maybe you want to do your own.
Yeah. Well, I mean, then you have to do your own HS classifications. I mean, it's not just a matter of like a simple tax remittance. You've got to make sure everything's being calculated correctly. Your products are classified appropriately. So there's just so much more that backs into it that we help with all of. So.
Okay, wonderful. And I also just wanted to touch on, and it's not directly Zonos stuff, but I was really impressed when we met earlier this year that there was a title for Strategic Partnership Manager. Yeah. You really seem to understand this whole new wave of co-selling, co-marketing, partnering, and again, partnershipping is the name of the podcast. Is that you had the crossbeam and whatnot. Where did you learn about all this stuff? Because I'm sort of new to it as well, and like what is that?
I think it's a relatively new term, right? Because we were both at UPS, we were both in sales, and so I think but having that really deep understanding of logistics and coming into an e-commerce, a little bit more e-commerce. I shouldn't even say e-com because it's really cross-border. It doesn't matter if it's B2C or B2B, but it's kind of, I think, understanding the natural links to everything, or just, it's when you're talking to people, and, our link together obviously was like very understandable. We provide that service, but there's other people like that I've worked with where people may not necessarily like get the immediate link, but we have like a payment provider. One of our partners is amazing because they're kind of like almost a marketplace for payments, for foreign payments. And so that was like immediately appealing to me, because I was like, God, this helps enable our customers to offer additional payments out in the country, in different countries. And the thing is that you can't assume that everyone all over the world wants to make Apple Pay or Google Pay or, buy now, pay later. Some of them are really like hesitant to go there. And so they might want to do a bank transfer. They might want to do, there's so many different wire transfers. So you have to kind of understand too, know your audience, like understand what in those countries, what those acceptable payment methods are. And so if you can have somebody who enables that for you, that's like a totally natural partnership. And I just partnered with another company that offers funding to these brands. And so again,
I saw that. Yep.
Yeah. So again, it's like you want to kind of like make these networks like super holistic to where the customer is going to be able to take advantage of things that are like a part of that network. And so I think it's just kind of going, okay, hey, what makes sense? What are the things that are going to like help our customers grow and scale? And then, that way we're all like super successful and we're able to.
And I have an opinion on that, which is that it's very hard to do any of that co-partnership, co-marketing type stuff if you don't have a niche in your business model with a defined target audience, because it's sort of like a supply chain, and there's a lot of a reach for vertical integration where you're starting to say, hey, I don't need partners, I can do everything myself inside of my business model. It becomes difficult because I just don't think people trust you. But what I found very appealing about Zonos was the purity of their business model, where it's literally, you're sort of like Stripe, but for the data to move things over borders. And it's just that. And you're not trying to do, there's many things that you could also get into that would maybe seem like there's a synergy there. But if you did those, if you got into doing bank loans, or if you got into shipping packages yourself, it would be, what kind of partnership is that? You know what I mean? Like you have to kind of trust the entity that you're linking up with. And I thought there was a lot of purity in the Zonos model.
Hey, thanks. We love specializing in that. And I think that's really been a goal, because also our CEO was an ex-UPSer, and he saw the need for this like 13 years ago. So it's really something that he's always understood was really needed in the marketplace and just wasn't offered. And again, we like to kind of like just really make things easy, provide that, transparency into everything so people can manage their own margins. They can like, just people need a good understanding, because international seems so daunting, or they're just scared, or they're like, we've had problems, we sent stuff before, it came back, it cost so much money. So we just really try and enable everything, make it super easy, turnkey, understandable, and just, the whole point is to scale something. And when you're trying to get your hand in too many cookie pots, it's like, all right, cookie jars, it's good to be really, really awesome in one thing, I think.
Yeah.
And not that there's anything wrong with doing a bunch of stuff, but I think that's when you start to kind of get maybe not as great at, multiple things, when you could be really killer at one. So,
yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm glad we were able to touch on that and on our UPS experience briefly, as well as review your product in depth. I mean, there was a lot I already knew about it, but I think I learned some more today just by seeing those visuals and doing the checkout and asking some pointed questions. So I'm going to try and wrap it up around the 30 minutes and change mark. So anyways, we really appreciate you being on here. I think it's super insightful. I understand it a little bit more. If people want to get a hold of you, where do they go, or a hold of Zonos? I don't know if you don't want people reaching out to you directly. I mean, I don't know, but what should they do?
Yeah, it's fine, because I'll always redirect. So it's Tiffanie, Tiffanie. You got my little name right there on the screen. And at Zonos.com. And then if you just want to look at our website and kind of check out our offering, it's Zonos.com. So Zonos. And, I'm always happy to have a conversation with people. And, if it's something a little bit more sales focused, we have amazing salespeople. If it's partner focused, I'm happy to talk to. We have both strategic and channel partners. So we will get you in the right place wherever you need to go. And we just are, excited to be out here in the marketplace and kind of making a difference. So.
Okay, wicked. Thank you so much. It was wonderful having you on the show, and we'll talk soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Craig.
Thanks.